Welcome to Bold Voices, Good Yarns. I'm your host, Ian Henzel. Behind every book lies an author's life story. So join me on an interactive journey as we step between the pages to explore how an author's life and their experiences have shaped the stories that we cherish and love. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe or a cocktail, and join me as we step between the pages. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ian Henzel, and I'm the host here at Bold Voices, Good Yarns. And today we have a very special guest, James Magruder, whose new collection of stories is No One Is Looking at You. This is a follow-up to his book, his novel, Vamp Until Ready. And we're just so very excited about this book. It starts off in the late 70s, and it focuses on students at Cornell University, a bit closeted, and it follows them through their lives. One character in particular, Roger, and we get to see him later on in part 2 of the book. So it starts with origins, and then in part 2, we get to see the progress that Roger has made and what's happened in his life. And before we go on, by the way, please make sure that you subscribe, hit the subscribe and follow us, because that really helps us. So welcome, James.
Ian, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I hope I got your book right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So I know that you've had a varied career and primarily in theater. And you had a nonfiction book, A History of the Yale Rep, come out this past spring, didn't you?
Yes. Actually, last fall.
And you've been involved in many theater productions, and you wrote the book for Broadway musicals, correct?
Yes, that's true.
You're just a jack of all trades, aren't you?
Right. I came to fiction late, but yes, I had to wait.
You know, I'm going to go off my normal pattern. Is writing fiction, how different is it from writing for the theater?
I feel that writing theater for most of my life until I was 40 and got serious about fiction, writing theater is a real help because you have to grab the listener's attention all the time. There always has to be forward action. There's no place to linger because your only tools are speech, silence, and gesture.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see my novels tend to have a lot of dialogue. Sometimes I think I'm cheating, but on the other hand, it's a big help.
Do you think, with a theater production, and something in my conversations I've had with authors, in a theater production or a film, it's such a collaborative effort because, you have the dialogue that the playwright wrote, but you have the director's interpretation of the work, the actor's interpretation. There's movement on stage, there's set design.
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say a character is nervous about walking into a room, they could pause at the door, they
Mm-hmm.
can show emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in fiction, that doesn't exist. It's up to the author. The author is the director, the author's the cameraman, the author's the set designer, and the reader only knows what the author has given them. So it would seem there's more work because you have to create all that for the reader.
Yeah, fiction is a much heavier lift because you don't have to describe what a person looks like because the actress or the actor is that person. You don't have to write sentences that you have to in fiction, like she crossed the room and lit a cigarette. That's blocking. That's something the director and the actor come up with. So it's actually a relief. And the fun is the collaboration with all the other people, if they're not jerks or divas.
Well, whereas in fiction, you just have to deal with yourself.
Yes, right.
Do you work with, do you have people read your work before?
Yes.
You have alpha readers, people who read and critique?
Yes, I have 6 alpha readers. They're all women, which is the story of my life. I'm surrounded by women. Yeah, they're a huge help. They actually, I would say they gave me my MFA in fiction because I was 40 when I started and did not get an MFA in fiction. And so they helped me. First person was easy. Third person was really tough. So they really pushed me to, to really explore a third person perspective. And I thank
So,
them for
do you have an MFA in creative writing fiction?
No, I have an MFA in dramaturgy and dramatic criticism from the Yale School of Drama. So, two different things. But learning to be a dramaturg taught me a lot about story, analyzing plays and helping them get better. It was been a huge help for writing fiction.
Dramaturgy always sounds like a medical condition.
Yes, I know.
I went to the doctor and he told me I have dramaturgy.
Dramaturgy.
I wonder if that's, how some people live in high drama. I wonder if we could call that they've been struck by dramaturgy.
Right.
So, can you share a bit about your upbringing and how that influenced your worldview?
Well, I was born in 1960 in Washington, D.C. My family moved around a lot, too much, and I was I was clearly a sissy and then a class clown to keep from to dodge the blows of my classmates. But it was terrible to move around. If you're a military brat or if you're a diplomat's kid, it's part of the thing. But we just never knew. My dad would say, "I'm getting a new job and we're moving to such and such." So that was. But on the other hand, it made me inward looking, and I always had my head in a book. Here's the first book I ever read, The Carrot Seed, at the age of 4.
Oh, it's the same artist as, isn't that what's his face in his purple
Yes,
crayon?
it's the purple crayon guy. Yes,
Harold in his purple crayon, I
Carolyn is
think it
purple
is.
crayon. And then if you want formation, when I was in 6th grade, we were living in New Jersey, and I had what is called the Roberts English series. And on, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks in, the teacher showed us this picture of like a Viking ship. And she said, write a story about it, write a few paragraphs. And so I wrote a few paragraphs, and she told my parents I was writing at college age level. And that was all it took to have because I felt like my family were all just like scorpions in a jar together. So this is a way to stand out, get attention. So that's that's I think those, the carrot seed, I just happen to have it around, but that little thing in 1970 from my English book set me off on a
So,
course.
would you say that was a pivotal moment that
That was
inspired you to start writing?
definitely a pivotal moment. I mean, as a 12-year-old, I toyed with plumbing and stockbroking and being a doctor, but I didn't really start to write until my 20s, theater, and then didn't start fiction until my 40s. But I was a huge reader always.
So reading had a significant influence
Yes,
on
yes,
you.
yeah. My sister and I, we had the World Book Encyclopedia. We just take out a volume and just go through it. So I have a lot of arcane knowledge from those years. And if you're asking for influences, these are the 3 books that changed my life as a writer, for good and for bad. One is Wanda Hickey's Night of Golden Memories by Gene Shepard, who wrote some hilariously
Gene
autobiographical.
Shepard's wonderful. God,
Yeah,
yeah.
Esquire and Playboy in the 60s. And then I think he had a radio show. It
Gene
just,
Shepard, right? And A Christmas
yeah,
Story
and yeah,
is
Christmas,
based,
that thing,
yeah.
A Christmas Story is based on one of those. So I couldn't get enough of him. And then here's the book in 7th grade. I found this on a shelf, The City Boy by The Adventures of Herbie Bookbinder, 1924, Herman Wouk. And so I was in 7th grade and I discovered that, and I had nothing in common with a Jewish kid in the 6th grade in the 20s in the Bronx. But Herbie's adventures and Wook's voice, which was so funny, saw me in a way I'd never been seen before in a book. And that's the spiel I use when I've sold about 80 copies at our local indie bookstore. I love it so much. And then the last one, I think a lot of people know, it's kind of, now it's kind of, it's a little like non-POC, but A Confederacy of Dunces. I've got that in my college years, or, it came out when I was a senior or just graduated from college. And I've read it a dozen times. It's
And
just,
the story behind that the
yes, yes.
author,
He took his
it had
life,
been
others
rejected.
shopped
It
it
had been
around.
rejected. All the publishers rejected it, and he ended up committing suicide, and his mother was the one, and it took her a long time, and then it won a Pulitzer.
Yeah, yeah.
So it just goes to show that And for a lot of people out there who do write, you
Mhm.
know, don't take rejection as necessarily a comment on your work. It's, you're really subject to whoever it is at the publishing company who's reading it and what the publisher feels their market is and where their market strengths are.
Well, I have to say that some of those stories and No One Is Looking at You, which I think are good stories, basically in the second half, the Roger House stories, I submitted them to 50, 60 journals. They still got rejected. And, the thing is that I have a tough hide. And usually somebody gets I've had a ton of bad theater reviews for things I've done too. So I don't question that I can write. Rejection doesn't tell me I can't write. It just says, and again, that's one of the secret tongue in cheek ideas behind the title. No One Is Looking at You, which is like, I'm an old white gay man. No one gives a shit what I think or see or have experienced, except for rattling good yarns.
Well, do you think that there's in the world of LGBTQ plus
Hmm.
books and literature, do you think that there's ageism?
Absolutely.
It cuts across race because there isn't much coming out there
Hmm.
from older voices.
And I think Felice Picano or Dorothy Allison, to mention two people who've left us in the last year, if they were writing today,
Yeah.
they wouldn't get anywhere. Gay literature, queer literature peaked in the 90s in a way. I mean, every year there's always a new person that mainstream accepts. So, but that's just me being an old bitch.
Well, how did you get involved in theater?
I did plays in high school and I did speech team, and those are kind of what shaped me. That's from my first novel, Sugarless.
Sugarless.
And it was like speech competitions are where you can win prizes without having to do anything with a ball to kick or throw. And I'm a very competitive person, so I started winning tournaments, and so that was it. And I did the musicals, but I was never really an actor. I just liked, I mean, I acted and I sang in musicals, but it was never a calling that I knew I could do nothing else. And also, I felt like I was too intelligent to waste my time auditioning for things.
What attracted you to dramaturgy?
Well, that was a combination of I was I was 24. I was pausing in my dissertation in French literature at Yale, and I found myself dancing in the chorus of "Damn Yankees" in summer stock, and that's Vamp Until Ready.
That's in Vamp Until
That
Ready.
is Vamp Until Ready. And so at the end of that summer, somebody else was saying, well, we'll start a theater and Jim, you can be the dramaturg. And I'd never heard the term. And so I went back to Yale and I had to take a class outside of the French department. I walked into a dramaturgy seminar by Leon Katz, who's no longer with us. And after two classes on the most boring section of the Western canon, which is medieval drama, I was hooked. There was a place for my mind and my interest in drama without being a director. I mean, I wasn't a playwright then, so it was like I just defected and never looked back.
Something that most people don't know about me is back in the 70s, I was going to I wanted to go to NYU for a master's in theater history
Mm,
and criticism,
hmm.
which I never did. It was not a very good economy, and I fell into jobs where I was making a good living, and so I never pursued it. But I do remember my fascination with theater when I was 14. My parents, for my birthday, got me a ticket, and I went with a friend from junior high. We went to see Man of La Mancha, and on Broadway.
Hmm.
And I remember, I think in the production, this big stairway comes down, or ladders, and the characters come down
Hmm.
from they come down to the stage, very little set, etc. And I thought that this was the ability to create life. I was just so s- overwhelmed, awed
Hmm.
by it. So, I mean, and I guess when you're writing fiction, you're also creating life.
Yes, yes. But my gateway drug was Pippin for
Pippin.
Broadway.
Oh God, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, Pippin.
I never saw it on Broadway, but I remember it. I remember the TV commercials in New
Yes. Oh,
York.
that revolutionized Broadway marketing. because it was
Y-
kind of
It,
not doing well. And then the Fosse commercial was like suddenly,
it did, but I can tell you that I don't think the commercial with Liv Ullmann in I Remember Mama did it did it because I just remember when I was a little girl in Norway, I listened to Richard Rodgers musicals. And now I'm in a Richard Rodgers musical.
and what's cool is you can find all that on YouTube. You can find them,
God,
find
God.
those commercials.
I was one of the people who saw Liv Ullmann in I Remember
Well,
Mama.
you and 10 other people.
And me and 10 other. We get together
Yeah,
annually.
right, right.
So are there any aspects about your life that your readers might be surprised influenced your writing?
Well, I have favorite writers, and you'd ask me to think about a favorite book that I'd like to live in. I'm tends to still be more of a classics person. I'm still working my way through all of George Eliot, so I don't read a lot of contemporary fiction unless my friends have written the books. So, but this book, my obsession is Dawn Powell, who was rediscovered in the early '90s, and after she's one of those stories like Zora Neale Hurston disappeared and Nathaniel West disappeared, but she came back via Gore Vidal, who knew her. And today, after, let me see, that's 35 years, she has 2 volumes in the Library of America. So I take great inspiration from Dawn Powell, and my favorite book of hers, it's not her best, but this is The Happy Island. And it's from 1938, and it's set in Manhattan, and it's sort of nightclub society. It has these out gay characters that that's never mentioned. I mean, you just get it because there's certain eternal
Mm.
qualities to gay people moving to New York. So that would be the book I'd live in, the 30s in New York, in one of those penthouses, or being somebody's, houseboy or something. So that's,
Bohemians.
yeah, Bohemians. Yeah, it's Bohemians. All of her books are marvelous. I'm glad they have a new, and now there's kind of she has a following. Anything else about my
There
life?
was a queer theater book that came out years ago. The title was, I think, We'll Call Them Bohemians.
Yes, yes. And yes. And well, the gay books that I read in the '70s, because now you grow up, you have YouTube, you have TV shows, you have alliance groups in your high school. In the '70s, when I grew up, there was nothing except, well, I put that in my intro to the book that came out about the cat in New York City by one of your authors.
A Cat in the Act.
A Cat in the Act. And so I wrote the intro to that saying, well, things were different then. But the books that I had to search for were like A Boy's Own Story, The Front Runner, which was incredibly important, Dancer from the Dance, which I don't love as much as I feel I should. And then there was one called Coming Out by not by Andrew Holland, of course not. But I saw it on a paperback rack in 1976, and I made my sister buy it for me. I read the tagline, and she was always willing to go to Montgomery Ward's and pick out the cast album of Pacific Overtures for me, because I was just too embarrassed, and that's the other idea of no one is looking at you. It's an Irish curse. Who do you think you are? Nobody's looking at you. But when you're a teenager, you think everybody's tracking every single thing you do. But I like your interpretation of no one's looking at you. What do you do when you think no one's looking at you or no one is?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, that was my
Yeah,
interpretation.
that's
And
your spin. For me, it's the
it's
Irish.
like,
Yeah, and my invisibility as an old.
well, isn't it interesting how, a reader or other people will interpret and see things in a writer's work that the writer didn't know they put in there.
Right, right. That's like one of the joys of having a readership or having readers who say, "I really love that part," or "This character," or "This sentence was a killer," and it's like, I just wrote that. You never know how you're gonna, you never know how you're gonna affect somebody. As a
People
teacher,
start quoting you.
well, that would be nice.
According to James Magruder, if you could talk to your younger self, I know it's kind of one of these trite questions, but if
Mhm.
you could go back and talk to your younger self, what advice?
Would, because I turned out to be everything I wanted to be or have wanted to be. I would have said start writing earlier because, again, I wasn't until my feast till I started really attempting serious fiction. But on the other hand, I needed those 20 years to figure out why I was sleeping with these older guys in my early 20s. And so when I was writing it, made understand why I was with that person. It's like a Hardy Boys series of why did I sleep with that older man? I
Was there
wouldn't.
a Hardy Boys? Was there a Hardy Boys called the
Yeah,
Hardy Boys and the Sugar
yeah, yeah.
Daddy or
It's
something
like
like
the
that?
mystery. It's the mystery of the glory hole. I think I certainly didn't need any. I wouldn't say I needed to read more. I could have been keeping a journal, because I've kept like three in my life at what I thought were going to be important years, and I've really yet to ransack them. But
I kept a journal from the time I was 16 to about 28.
well, you've got a lot of material.
And I recently, I mean, I started reading my journals,
Uh-huh.
and there is nothing profound. It's mainly angst,
Hmm.
from page to page. And then after I came out, is does this guy like me? I like this guy. He
Hmm.
doesn't like me. I wish you noticed me. So it was a lot
Right.
of that. And I kind of see the young James Magruder. You're 9 years old. You've got your plastic pencil case. You've
Hmm.
got your loose leaf binder that you drew on the
Hmm.
binder cover, and you've got a list. And what I want to be when I grow up, bon vivant, man. About
Right.
well, what would you tell your younger self?
I would just say keep journals and get an earlier start. Well, the thing is, I started late because I got HIV in 1998, and I thought I was statistically supposed to die by 1996. But then my immune system recovered with I was one of the first combination therapy miracles. So I feel like even though right after that I had my first Broadway musical, I was down. I was down for the count. Basically, when I learned that I was going to live, I said to myself, "Well, you need to fulfill your early promise," even though I didn't know what that. I had to. I was given this extra life in order to write, and I also needed HIV to make myself a more serious person, and not just because there's an alternate title for "No One's Looking at You," or at least the first half of all the Cornell kids would be "My Fast Behind." Yeah, HIV really focused me in a way I wouldn't anybody else.
Well, it's interesting how those sorts of life events really pull things into perspective. And when we're younger, in particular, we think that time is endless,
Yes.
and we only have a five. I say that now, having just turned 70. That, yeah, God, how the hell did I
How
get
did that
here?
happen?
How did that happen? This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to be young and pretty forever.
Right, and you're still pretty inside. I
I
mean,
I
very
am.
pretty you have a very pretty character.
It's like my parents. She's got such a wonderful personality.
Or from a chorus line, pretty is nice, but different is nice, but it sure isn't pretty. Pretty is what it's about. I never met
Yeah.
anyone who was different who can figure that out.
So yeah, it's interesting. With more limited time, there's an urgency, and I'm not saying that it's good that you got HIV, but a positive is that it happened earlier in your life, and kind of you refocused, and positive things
Yeah.
came out of that.
Well, and if I'd been born in 1962 instead of 1960, I would have known what safe sex was. I would have been coming of my sexual maturity after they'd said HIV is a virus and don't do this and do that. Yeah. So it's just this narrow window. But again, I'll never say I lucked out, but there were some, and also the other huge event in my life was my father dying when I was 19 while I was at Cornell. And within 2 days, I switched from being an economics major because he was an accountant to being a French major. I mean, you couldn't put those, within 3 days, I was
Wow.
to
Wow.
France. When I was 19, it wasn't like I could see there was a connection, but of course, he needed to be gone for me to like pursue French literature. And I think in the end, he would have let me do whatever I wanted, but I felt I needed to do something that would please him.
And you became aware of that later,
Only
not
much
in the
later. Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And Yeah. So this.
Interesting how we can look back on our lives and there are things that happen and we don't see the connection at the time, but with the benefit of the distance of time, we do see connections. So I want to pivot into the
Mhm.
question that I ask all of our guests. Some of them like it, some of them run screaming from the room, but
Yeah.
when I think of books, I've always been very immersed in books.
Hmm.
And so, particularly when I was younger, there were books that I wanted to live in, or I wanted to be best friends with a character. If you could live in a book or even visit, what book would you choose?
Well, I already said The Happy Island by Don Powell, 30s Bohemia. If I had another one, well, again, they've made a movie out of Morris. So I feel like I live in that every time I see it because I so identified with Morris and Scudder and, the other guy.
Well, what about those two books? Let's talk about both. What about the world that was created, those worlds that were created,
Well,
interests you that you would want to step into it?
yeah, well, I just feel like when you said bon vivant, I always feel like, oh, if I'd moved to New York in the 30s, 40s, 50s, I'd have been an instant success. I lived there for a while in the 80s, and you think you're going to be the most famous person on Third Avenue in the bars, but on the other hand, I would be quite happy to be just an ordinary queer person in the 50s or the 30s in New York. And hopefully, again, if you're young and attractive, you will draw attention whether you want it or not.
Mm.
So and Don Powell is just hilariously funny and matter of fact. And Morris is, the Downton Abbey, the what is that show that everybody can't get enough, that trashy show that everybody can't get enough of? The Gilded Age. Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, she's on the cover. Carrie Coons is on the cover of this week's New Yorker. But Morris is like a time when, again, they guys with these feelings didn't know what they were feeling and didn't know that there was a place to put those feelings. And Forster waited until he was closeted his whole life, but that was published posthumously in
It
19.
was a posthumous. I remember it came out in about 74, 75. It was
Yeah.
posthumous
Yeah.
publication.
But there's something about that innocence, because I always would like to go back to an innocent time, but I would say, I don't know if I was ever innocent. Well, I was. So that's what English country living, but also on the other hand, like finding true love. That was like one of the best first love stories I ever read. Because the front runner, of course, Billy Sive gets killed in an Olympic
Yeah.
race. Right. And then his coach actually sleeps with the other one after. And it's like, oh, well, that's not romantic. That's just gay men being promiscuous. Of course, I was promiscuous. That's why. Although I've been married, I've been with the same man for, it'll be 27 years in November. And so
Well,
I,
these worlds, you talk about like the Bohemian 1930s. I'm sure that there are people watching this who think, "Oh God, I would have loved to have been around in the 70s. I would
sure.
have loved to have been around in the." And let me tell you something, having been born in the 50s
Hmm.
and come out pre-AIDS, the 70s were fabulous. To be 18 years old in New York and the legal age for drinking in bars was 18 and not have the specter of AIDS,
Yeah.
it was a fabulous time. So
Yeah.
I won't deny that.
I had a few years with that, but yeah. I would have been more careful, I think, but on the other hand, this is what life has handed me, and I'm very happy that you've taken. No one is looking at you. And if anybody wants to know what I looked like back then, why you just have to look at the cover. That is the student film of a friend in my senior year at college. Some people don't recognize me, so I really don't usually spill that. They have to say, "Is that you?" I'll say, "No, that's my twin brother."
Well, James, I want to thank you for being on Bold Voices, Good Yarns. And this has been a little bit different. It's like uh two old gay men chewing the fat.
Right.
It's like is this my my foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the nursing home, sitting around
If
talking
you
about,
get into,
well, in my day,
well, if you
you
get,
know,
yeah, well, if you get into the right nursing home, otherwise it's just like breakfast at Daisy Duke's at the at Saints and Sinners, which I love. And I'll see you there, where we'll all be sitting around having breakfast at Daisy Duke's.
kids these days don't know
Kids
how
these
good they,
days and that
yeah,
rock
yeah.
music, right?
And that rock music. So I want to thank you. So we have been in conversation with James Magruder, whose new book is No One Is Looking at You. It's a fabulous book. I highly recommend going out and getting a copy. There will be links to the book in the show notes and description. So James, and before I say goodbye, once again, up at the top, you'll see subscribe,
Oh,
follow. Please subscribe and follow us. It's not really on the screen now,
right. Okay.
James.
I will. I will.
But you subscribe and follow us because it really does help the show. And James, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It's been fabulous to be in conversation with you.
Yeah, I miss your face and your voice, and so now I don't have to wait till next March.
Now you have both. Well, take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye. You've been listening to Bold Voices, Good Yarns, brought to you by Rattling Good Yarns Press. Subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube, and follow us on social media. Search for Rattling Good Yarns Press. Also, visit our website at rattlinggoodyarns.com, where you can find great reads and interesting articles about the world of books. See you soon!